help children be more assertive and self-confident without being demanding or aggressive? Clinical psychologist and mum of 3, Jacqui Maguire, says assertiveness is a life skill, not a personality trait. She says children can learn it with practice, encouragement and role models, but often parents don't really have a handle on the skill either, and assertiveness takes practice for all of us. Morning, Jacqui. Always lovely to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure, Catherine. Nice to see you too.
How do you define assertiveness?
So assertiveness is a style of communication. It means that I am able to speak up for my needs or my feelings or my opinions in a respectful way to others. So I see assertiveness in the middle of passive, which is that I perhaps withdraw or I can't speak up for my needs. What does that look like in reality, Catherine? It may look like, I don't mind what we do. Or, if I'm a child, I go to a friend's house and I'm not able to say, I don't like that, or can we play something else? So, that's one side of the spectrum. The other is aggressive, which is I speak up for my needs, but in a way that steamrolls somebody else, takes over, in a tantruming way, in a way that isn't respectful of the other person. So
it's interesting that you say it is not a personality trait. And I suppose we all know people that we put at one or t'other end of that spectrum. How have they got there then?
Yeah, well, I can pull on a number of psychological theories if we get geeky for a second. But if you go to Bandura, which is social learning theory, when I am a child, I learn by seeing. I learn by what's role modelled around me. So if I'm raised by a parent that is able to, for example, say to somebody in a cafe, I'm really sorry, but my coffee's burnt. Would you mind remaking that? And in New Zealand, I can see your face.
No, it wouldn't happen. I just go, no, it's lovely, thank you.
Yeah, which is the passive, yes, right? Yeah, whereas you've just spent probably now $7 on a coffee. Yeah. Should you drink it if it tastes awful?
I probably would. I wouldn't want to make that person's day any worse.
So role modelling is really, really important, that we are able to show our children that we can stand up for ourselves in a way that doesn't hurt other people. But it's also, I think, about explicitly teaching our children around not only what they say, but how they say it. So assertiveness, if you break that down, it uses I statements. I don't like that, please. Or, Mum, my sister's taken my toy and I'm upset. Being able to explicitly say what you're wanting without getting upset.
What's really interesting in the family context, I don't want to get into birth order or anything like that, but there are the differences within families, and it could be that a dominant sibling is seeing another sibling come up with a different tactic for coping. So you're teaching it individually, but you're also looking at the whole dynamic, aren't you?
You absolutely are. I mean, we could have a lengthy conversation about birth order with my 3 children, Catherine, but, but it's also, so you say role model, but also, you can teach children by getting them to parrot after you. So you often hear parents say phrases like, I don't like you speaking like that. Actually, what's more helpful is saying to your child, I'd like you to say, Mum, I don't want that plate. Can I have another one?
So flip it into the positive.
Just flip it into what you want.
Yeah,
tell them what you want to hear. But it's more than what you're saying, Catherine. It's also too, when you speak to others, do your children see you stand up straight, look people in the eye? Do you provide guidance to your children around that? Do you role play scenarios with them, for example?
So do you need to start with yourself in some ways? And if you have a particularly passive nature, what do you do? Do you have to kind of give yourself a bit of a...
I think it's how old your child is. I think when they're at an age where they can engage in conversation with you, I'd be saying, this is something that I'm working on. Mum finds that really hard. But actually, assertiveness is really, really important for a number of reasons. And so I'm going to start practicing that with you. And if we go to the reasons about why this is important, Catherine, it's important because it helps us develop healthy relationships. We want our children, and we want us as adults, to be able to have boundaries in relationships, to share our needs, to be respectful and be able to actively listen to the people around us, all part of assertiveness. Assertiveness is important, Catherine, because it helps boost self-confidence and self-esteem. So I want my children to be able to grow up and know that their opinions are valid. That doesn't mean as a parent I have to give them everything I want. But can I show them that when they speak up, I hear them? I can validate them, and I can share with them why I might take their opinion on board or not. it's a major contributor to reducing bullying. And if you look at some OECD stats that came out last year, New Zealand is 36 out of 36 in the OECD EU stats for child mental wellbeing. And bullying was a major contributor to those statistics. And we know that if we can train children to speak up for themselves and to hold their ground in a helpful way, that reduces bullying.
So let's talk about the how-to, the passive, the aggressive, the assertive. Can you give us examples of each way of responding to a situation?
In terms of what it would look like?
Yeah, or what you might say, what the verbal might be.
Sure. So passive children might say nothing. So they might go along with their friends. You think about peer pressure situations. So not just young children. Let's talk about teenagers. You know, that might be a group of teenagers that start vaping and one child doesn't want to and they don't feel able to say no. So they go along with it, for example. Aggressive, on the other hand, might be I lose at a game. Say I'm an 8-year-old child and I lose, and instead of being able to say I'm upset because I lost, I tip the whole board game up on everybody else. Or aggressive might be I get really upset because my sibling has seemingly got their way over me, and so I break down, I yell, I hit, I explode.
Name calling, part of that as well.
Yeah, and so assertive is I can name my feeling, which requires emotional intelligence, which is a part of how you teach this skill.
Let's put ourselves in a fairly typical situation, sharing toys or taking turns.
Yep.
How could it play out, for better or worse?
Oh, well, so a passive child might run away and cry, for example. A passive child might just go along with it, look sad, say nothing, which means the other child potentially dominates over them, and they learn over time that perhaps their voice isn't important, or they don't learn the skill set of speaking up for themselves. Aggressive looks like I can't listen to other people, I can't share, I don't ask my friends, what would you like to do? I am starting to learn and build muscle memory that I can dominate my way through situations.
What's the key of that assertive response? Is it first how you feel about the situation,
Yes.
and then second what you want to have happen?
Correct. And it is how you phrase it. So I'm upset. I'm upset because you've taken my toy. You can have it when I'm finished, which is respectful but clear. And an example of this, I went on a school trip this week, Catherine, with 100 children. We're on the bus and my daughter was talking and she interrupted another child. And this is 6 and 7-year-olds. And the other child said to my daughter, "Hey, you interrupted, please let me finish." And I thought, that's assertiveness. The child was Canadian. And I thought, interesting, interesting. Is there a cultural element here where he's been raised by parents that are clear and assertive? And to New Zealanders, I don't think we're very good at that, Catherine.
So this is a good question for right now. What about teaching kids how to take it when someone is assertive with them and not to take it to heart? Because it is cultural. And when a child speaks up like that, the kid goes, well, that's never happened to me before.
Yeah.
How do you teach a child that when someone speaks that way to them, it's not their bad person.
Yeah.
It's that person is communicating a change of the change that they'd like to see.
Well, I think we need to teach children about different styles of communication. So in my prep for this, I thought I'd try it out at home, because no better than to use case studies when you're here, Catherine. So my eldest daughter is 6, and she was grumpy because her sister sat on the stool that she wanted while we were having dinner, and the world ended and big feelings came up. And I said to her, "Hey, Orla, I'm preparing for this interview tomorrow and I'm learning about the difference between assertive and aggressive communication. Can I get you to be assertive by saying, 'Mum, I'm upset. Coco sat in my seat.'" And so, she parroted that back and she got it. And about 2 or 3 scenarios over the night, I said to her, "What would assertive look like, Orla?" And I'm like, young children, Catherine, are amazing. If you can speak to them about what you're wanting to see and how that sounds, they'll pick it up. And with young children, you could use animals. Passive is the turtle. It withdraws into its shell. Aggressive is the tiger. It's going to roar and be loud. Assertive is the wise owl. You can use metaphors for children to get them thinking about what you want and how you see it.
Popped something else into my mind, actually, is that often children can be quite naturally express of what they think and want, and we can kind of train them out of it if we're not careful, because they're not being polite.
Yeah, and they're not doing what you want. And it's way harder as a parent to sit and listen and hear. But you think about, developing children, and you think about children that are teenagers. I want my children, when they're teens, to feel like they can speak up when they get into a romantic relationship and say, I'm not comfortable with that. I want them to be able to say in risky situations, I don't want to do that, which means they need to learn that their opinion is valid.
What about when they're being assertive with you? And that's we could get into the battle of wills situation.
Well, I think that's about being a mindful, calm parent. And it's hard, Catherine, when you're tired and it's 5 o'clock and you've got multiple demands coming at you. It is easier for your kids to just listen and do what you want. And so part of that, and a strategy I've been using lately, is what I would call anchoring, which is what kind of parent do I want to be? I want to be calm and I want my children to feel heard. Doesn't mean they get their way.
Exactly. That's my point.
Doesn't mean they get their way.
Where you remind them, you're the parent, you've been heard. It's not happening.
It's interesting. It's like assertiveness there's a lot of training going on in schools, for example, of my body is my body. My 4-year-old came down the other night and said, I don't want to go to bed, my body is my body. And I said, it is your body, Coco, and it's bedtime. If I'm wanting to give you a hug and you say, I don't want a hug, Mum, I'll listen to you and respect that. I want you to learn that your opinions on that are absolutely valid and important, But when it's bedtime, it's bedtime. So it's also helping children differentiate the scenarios.
So clever, aren't they? They could navigate, they can negotiate across various topics.
I don't want to eat dinner, it's my body. It is your body and here's your choices. Would you like option A or option B? I'm giving you choice, but it's controlled choice.
Yeah. Okay, so model it, practice it and role play it. The role of the I statements.
Yes.
Just explain that a little bit more. This is about what we were talking earlier about, the two parts. One is to say what your feeling is, and then second, what you want to happen.
Yeah. And when you use I statements, Catherine, I think that gets you out from blame. And so that moves you away from the aggression.
It's not
you're
about
owning
the
your
other
feelings.
person.
No, you're owning your feelings. And I do this training with executives and businesses, Catherine. When you spoke over me in that meeting, I felt small. I felt like my opinion didn't matter. What I need in future is for you too. We're teaching children that in a much more simplistic form, which is, can you name what you're feeling? And so, emotional intelligence is important. I felt upset when you stole my toy. Please, can you give that back?
Again, for the parent for whom they know their own kind of style is not the assertive style. Can you be honest about that? Can you share?
Absolutely, because I think our children also need to learn that learning is lifelong, and we don't get it right. And so I will be honest with New Zealand. Sometimes when I am tired, I get cross and I get grumpy. And I have said to my children, Mummy needs to learn, and I'm still learning, that when I'm tired, how to stay calm. Can we practice that together? So I absolutely think we can own that for our kids, and we can practice it along with them.
The cultural setting of this is fascinating. Because in different cultures within Aotearoa, let alone, as you've mentioned, in different parts of the world, the sort of norm can differ significantly. Do you have to teach that as well, or because
I think of tall poppy syndrome in New Zealand in terms of not speaking up, but
also we're polite. We don't. Tall poppy's right. Tall poppy's right. We don't. Sing of our kumara's sweetness another way.
No, but I think assertiveness is often misinterpreted as rude in this,
or arrogant
in this country. And I think young children don't understand those concepts, but they see what they see. And so I think the role modelling is important. But I think if you've got a teenager, or you can speak with them or 9-10-year-olds around that it is absolutely okay to be proud of your achievements, but that's different from boasting. I think you can teach the difference between being proud and standing tall and having mana compared to shouting your successes and trampling over others. I teach that with my girls with winning a game. My children can parrot back to me that that's boasting, and so you can be happy, but you're not allowed to be happy in a way that makes other people feel sad. There's a difference.
That point that we made at the outset about not being... it's another word I'm looking for, and sometimes you'll find this is a generational trait, right? Older generations, I'm not even going to go there. It's when a kid is regarded as being just a bit too a bit too keen to express their opinion, or a bit too... I don't know whether this has changed. I don't know, even if in certain contexts, whether it even happens anymore. But this idea that this kid's just talking a bit out of turn, this is an adult space.
You should be seen and not heard.
Something along those lines.
I think that's shifting, Catherine. And I was thinking about that on my drive here, because I was thinking about all the children I know, and I have a lot of other people's kids that come and go from our house on play dates, etc. You know, I think there is a higher percentage of children that will now, call me by my first name. Growing up with young children, you know, when I was a child, would children have even called parents by their first name? No, I think we were taught to call them Mrs. X and Mr. Y, you know. But I'll have children come up to me and say, Jacqui, I don't like that. Can I have X? Pretty assertively, you know, and I think that's almost jarring as an adult to go, whoa, here's a child I don't know very well. And then I go, actually, how great that they feel comfortable to be able to say that. But then there are definitely others that don't.
It's almost back to that point that the person made about teaching kids not to take it to heart when the response you get is not what you anticipated.
Yeah.
So if you do get someone who just sort of says, who are you to be talking to me like that they don't take it to heart again. But I suppose, as you say, that's just learning. That's just going through life.
It is learning, and it's building muscle memory. And I think it's dialogue. You've got to be able to talk with your children. And like we said earlier, there will be some parents. I'm pretty good at being able to say, the coffee's burnt, can I have another one? You know, like my children have watched that. But other parents wouldn't. And so I think that's being able to talk through it, but also what do you expose your children? Because children learn from more than their parents. Are they involved in sports teams where you learn to stick up for each other and yourself in a very respectful way? And coaches demonstrate that. You know, are you part of a drama club where you learn to express feelings and that's taught? And, you know, there are ways outside of mum and dad where you can learn those skills. Friend groups, teachers, absolutely.
Thank you as always. Much appreciated. Jacqui Maguire with Parenting Today.